Gazing at the snow dancing outside my window, I took a sip of warm chamomile tea. This January in Michigan was colder than usual, with thick ice clinging to the roads. "John, this winter is particularly cold, isn't it?" I spoke softly to my husband's photograph displayed above the living room fireplace. John, who passed away suddenly from a heart attack 2 years ago, still wore his gentle smile. We'd been together for 42 years since meeting at Michigan State University's College of Education. For 35 years, we taught at Kent County Public School together. He taught 4th grade while I handled 2nd grade, and sometimes we collaborated on extracurricular activities. During science fair season, we often stayed late helping students with their projects. His death came without warning. We had breakfast together as usual, and he left for school saying, "Looks like snow today." He never came back. When he collapsed in the teacher's lounge, it was already too late by the time the ambulance arrived. After his death, I retired from teaching. Now, I live alone in this suburban house. Oh, you should see how beautifully the cyclamen is blooming in the greenhouse this year. The greenhouse was John's last Christmas present to me. "Let's enjoy gardening together after retirement," he had said. That promise remained unfulfilled. Now, the greenhouse has become my special place for enjoying my daily gardening routine. My flowers have quite a reputation at the First Presbyterian Church's gardening club. Someone always comes to see the greenhouse after Wednesday Bible study. On the table sits a family photo taken last Christmas. It shows my daughter Jessica, my granddaughter Emily, and Jessica's husband Robert. Everyone looked so happy then. Jessica is 35. Although she attended the University of Michigan's College of Education like me, she ended up working at an accounting firm after graduation. After her divorce 3 years ago, she started working part-time at Food 4 Less. My daughter is kind and conscientious, but sometimes indecisive. Since childhood, she'd always needed help from John or me to resolve conflicts with friends. I felt relieved when she married Robert last year, who was a real estate company manager. Jessica and Robert met at a church charity bazaar. He was evaluating donated items while Jessica was working as a cashier. He was a manager at a well-known real estate company in the East Grand Rapids area and active in church activities. At the wedding, even the pastor blessed them, saying, "This is truly the birth of an ideal Christian family." My first impression of him was positive, especially how good he was with children. My 12-year-old granddaughter Emily beams in the photo. She's gifted in mathematics and even won first prize at last year's science fair with her project on renewable energy for home use. Like her grandfather's DNA at work, she has exceptional scientific talent. With her bright and energetic personality, she always enthusiastically shared stories about school during our weekend dinners. She's a key member of East Grand Rapids Middle School's math club and is expected to compete in next year's state competition. However, something has been wrong for about 3 months. Our traditional weekend dinners suddenly started getting canceled. The reasons varied: Robert working late, Emily's exam preparation, unexpected errands. At first, I thought it was just coincidence. They probably needed time to adjust as a new family. But the cancellations continued, and now I'm lucky if I see them once a month. Phone conversations feel different too. Sorry, Mom. I can't talk right now. Oh, Robert just got home. Emily. She seems busy. There's always urgency in Jessica's voice. Conversations are brief and hastily ended. Our casual chats about everyday life have become rare. I can barely talk to Emily either. When she does come to the phone, her once cheerful voice is gone. She gives only brief, obligatory responses before passing the phone back. I heard from my former colleagues at school that her grades have been slipping. Maybe it's just taking time to adjust to the new environment. Though I tell myself this, a vague anxiety grows in my heart. The new environment after marriage. The relationship with Robert as a new father. Decreased contact from my daughter. And Emily's condition. A former colleague concerned about Emily at school had reported something worrying. Emily's been leaving most of her lunch uneaten lately. As the fireplace flames flickered quietly, snow continued falling outside. Just as I reached for my coat to check on the greenhouse cyclamen, the phone rang. Hello, Sarah Miller speaking. Thinking it might be about the First Presbyterian Church Bible Study Group, I picked up the receiver, but there was no response. Just faint breathing. Somehow familiar breathing. Hello? Emily. The moment I called her name, the line went dead. An unfamiliar number. My anxiety grew stronger. 3 days after that suspicious call, I spent restless days. I called Jessica's house multiple times, but always got the answering machine. No response to my messages either. When I tried to check on them through church acquaintances, I only learned that they haven't been coming to worship services lately. Around 9 p.m. Friday night, I was parked at Food for Less. I usually avoid going out at night, but my refrigerator was empty. I needed bread and milk for tomorrow's breakfast, plus fertilizer for the greenhouse cyclamen. Due to the cold snap, the temperature had dropped, and fine ice crystals clung to the windshield. The parking lot lights reflected off these crystals, creating faint rainbow colors. At the store entrance, a young clerk in a red jacket was organizing shopping carts with nearly frozen hands. His breath turned to white smoke, dissolving in the cold night air. As the automatic doors opened, warm air and fluorescent lighting spread across the store interior. Food for Less was quieter than usual at this hour. Only 2 registers were open, with night shift employees busy restocking shelves. Nat King Cole's "Unforgettable" played softly through the speakers, occasionally interrupted by mechanical, customer service announcements. Looks like the cold snap will continue tomorrow. Canned goods are on sale. A familiar elderly clerk greeted me at the entrance. I'm sure she was Jessica's colleague. But when I tried to ask about my daughter, she gave me a meaningful look for just a moment before hurrying away. On my way to the bread aisle, a middle-aged couple was checking discount stickers in the canned goods section. At the prepared foods counter, a man in security guard uniform was examining half-priced boxed meals. In the produce section, an employee in an apron was carefully removing spoiled vegetables. "I'll take this bread." Just as I picked up some rye bread for tomorrow's breakfast, catching a whiff of its fresh aroma. "Please." A faint voice came from behind me. When I turned around, there stood a thin girl. Her navy blue hoodie was clearly too thin to ward off the cold. There was a large stain on the collar, and the left elbow seam was coming undone. Her sneakers were worn at the toes, with shoelaces that had been retied many times. "I'm hungry," the girl continued in a trembling voice that seemed about to fade away. At the other end of the aisle, a middle-aged woman with a shopping cart glanced over and quickly passed by. The security guard near the registers seemed to be intentionally turning his back. In the candy aisle, an elementary school boy was begging his mother for something. The scene felt strangely surreal. Then, the fluorescent lights illuminated the girl's face. "Emily." My voice shook at the unbelievable sight. The person before me was undoubtedly my granddaughter. But she looked like a completely different person from 3 months ago. Her cheeks were sunken, with dark circles under her eyes. Her once glossy black hair had lost its shine, with split ends visible in places. Her lips were dry and cracked, with traces of blood visible. On her left arm, where the hoodie sleeve had rolled up, several purple bruises in the shape of fingerprints were visible. They clearly looked like marks from being grabbed forcefully. "Grandma." Emily's eyes widened. I could see her pupils trembling. The next moment, large tears spilled from her eyes. Under the fluorescent lights, they sparkled like small crystals. "Please, don't tell Mom." Desperately trying to suppress her voice, Emily wiped her tears with her t-shirt sleeve. The movement revealed fresh wounds on her neck. Her hands were shaking violently from cold and fear. Her fingertips were red and swollen from the cold. "It's all right, Emily. I'll take care of everything." I made an immediate decision. I returned all the groceries in my cart and got a new one. The cart wheels made a faint sound in the quiet store. "First, let's pick out your favorite foods. Bread, milk, cheese, ham, fruit, cereal." I kept adding Emily's favorite items to the cart. I remembered everything she had said she liked during our dinner gatherings. She just followed silently, but I could see her nose twitch slightly at the smell of the food section. The gesture reminded me of a small animal. On our way to the registers, I stopped at the women's clothing section. "You need this coat too. Your hoodie is much too thin for this weather." I picked up a warm-down coat. The navy blue coat seemed to fit her perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her. She started to say something, but I gently shook my head. At the register, the elderly female clerk watched us with concern. However, she said nothing and just continued scanning items. When handling the payment, she only whispered, "Be careful," while handing me the receipt. "Stay at my house tonight." On the way to the parking lot, Emily wouldn't leave my shadow. She walked with trembling steps, occasionally looking back. When we stepped outside, she instinctively hunched her shoulders. The moment we got in the car, Emily let out a deep sigh. Her hands were shaking too much to fasten the seatbelt, so I helped her. Under the interior light, I checked my granddaughter's condition again. In just 3 months, Emily had become alarmingly thin. The sweater under her hoodie was clearly old, with loose threads visible in several places. I could see her shoulder bones protruding even through her clothes. Let me turn up the heat. While adjusting the heater temperature, I checked the back seat through the rearview mirror. Emily was huddled small, clutching her new coat as if embracing it. She looked like someone afraid of being found. Every time the street lights illuminated her profile, deep fatigue was visible. "It's okay, Emily. You're safe now." As I started the engine, I had made up my mind. I would protect this child, no matter what. From the back seat, Emily's soft sleeping breaths had begun. An hour after arriving home, Emily was quietly sipping soup. Her hands gradually stopped shaking as she sat before the warm meal. On the kitchen table lay bread, ham, and cheese we'd bought at Food for Less. She occasionally glanced at the food as if afraid it might suddenly disappear. "Emily, there's more if you'd like some." When I pointed to the pot of chicken noodle soup, she shook her head slightly. But her eyes definitely followed the pot. "Don't hold back." At my words, tears welled up in her eyes again. She put down her spoon and began speaking in a trembling voice. "At home, we only get 1 meal a day." Those words made my heart freeze. Robert, my new dad, decided it. He says luxurious meals are unnecessary. Emily's voice was tiny, as if afraid of being overheard. "No breakfast. I can eat lunch at school, but at night sometimes there's only bread and water." As she spoke, her eyes scanned every corner of the room, as if watching for Robert to suddenly appear. "My allowance is gone too. Mom's salary. Robert controls all of it." Emily pulled a worn notebook from her uniform pocket. Inside were detailed records of meals in tiny handwriting. Every school lunch menu and even occasional snacks from teachers were meticulously noted. "I have to report everything I eat every day. If I lie..." She unconsciously rubbed the bruises on her left arm. "They took away my phone. I only have an old one for school contact. But even that gets checked every day. Call logs, messages, everything." As she spoke, the words began flowing more freely, as if a long-sealed door of secrets had suddenly burst open. "Mom, she's the same." Emily's voice shook. "Her phone is monitored too. Every shopping receipt gets checked. If there's any unplanned spending..." She swallowed her words. "Mom's salary all goes to Robert's account. Her supermarket wages, her part-time pay. He says married couples should have one purse." I was beginning to understand why my daughter's calls had decreased. He made her close all her savings accounts. Said married couples share one wallet. Even my college savings. Emily's voice trailed off. She took another sip of soup and continued. "Mom said she wanted to run away. But Robert showed us pictures of his ex-wife. He said, "You know what happened to that woman." A chill ran down my spine. "Even if we try going to the police, nobody will believe you," he says. "I'm an exemplary real estate manager and church deacon. You're just a part-time employee." Emily's voice grew progressively quieter. "When I tried telling a teacher at school, he threatened I'll destroy Emily's dreams of college. They weren't allowed to visit food banks or ask neighbors for help." The daily reality of mother and daughter under complete surveillance was gradually becoming clear. Today, Mom had night shift and Robert was out drinking with friends, so I finally got to go outside. Looking at the bread on the table, Emily added, "For the first time in so long, I can eat until I'm full." I stood up and hugged Emily. I could feel her bones protruding through her back. "Everything will be all right now, Emily. I promise I'll protect you." Emily's small body trembled in response to the embrace. Outside the kitchen window, snow continued falling silently. This house felt like the only safe haven right now. However, there was still something I couldn't understand. Why was Jessica enduring such a situation? What had driven her to such extremes? While gently stroking Emily's hair, I had made my decision. To change this situation, we first needed evidence. And we needed to find appropriate support. "Get some rest. I'll prepare a comfortable place for you to sleep." While making up the guest room bed, I organized my next steps in my head. Tomorrow is Saturday. First, I need to contact people I can trust. After Emily fell asleep, I sat by the fireplace and opened my old address book. Inside were contacts built over 35 years of teaching, child welfare specialists, DV shelter volunteers, trusted lawyers. Outside, the snow was getting deeper. On this cold winter night, preparations for a quiet battle were beginning. The night I took Emily in, my first thought was to contact my daughter. However, as I reached for the phone, Emily's pleading words came back to me. "Please, don't tell Mom." My 35 years of teaching experience raised a warning flag. I had seen many times how directly contacting victims in DV cases could lead to the worst outcomes. The fact that Robert monitored Jessica's phone. The implied violence toward his ex-wife. Hasty action could put mother and daughter in even greater danger. I need to consult professionals first. The next morning, Emily was still sleeping in the guest room. Though she had been troubled by nightmares throughout the night, she was now breathing peacefully. While preparing breakfast, I called my old colleague, Mary Thompson. "Sarah, I understand. I'll head to the school right away. Even though it's Saturday, I should be able to get Emily's teacher Jane to come in. Mary and I go back 30 years. My former colleague at Kent County Public School and now watches over students as vice principal at East Grand Rapids Middle School." "You haven't contacted Jessica yet?" "No. According to Emily, Robert monitors her every move." "Yes, we need to approach this carefully." An hour later, we faced each other in an empty classroom. Emily's teacher Jane Walker sighed while spreading out student guidance files. I had noticed something was wrong lately. especially during lunchtime. Jane continued while checking her notes. The records from the past 3 months showed alarming changes. Weight loss of 18 pounds since December. Gets out of breath quickly in PE class. During lunch, she just eats silently without talking to friends. Sometimes I've seen her putting bread in her pockets. Reports from other teachers too. Mary opened another file. The math teacher reported that Emily, once energetic, now fell asleep in class. The art teacher noted how her drawings had suddenly turned dark. The school counselor's report is decisive. Sarah Parker's detailed records, sudden grade drops, weight loss in PE class, and concerning statements. I don't want to go home. I can't concentrate because I'm hungry. My new dad scares me. Everything pointed to abuse. But why didn't we notice sooner? Regret tinged Jane's voice. Robert was exemplary at parent-teacher conferences. He showed genuine concern about Emily's falling grades, seriously saying, "We need to be stricter." That's how abusers operate. From my experience in education, I understood. Perpetrators are often skilled at maintaining appearances. We don't have enough evidence for the police yet. But Mary's next words offered hope. I'll contact YWCA West Central Michigan. They're experts in DV victim support, especially in cases of financial abuse. On Sunday, YWCA social worker Patricia Brown visited my home. Emily tearfully gave her testimony, and photos were taken of her injuries and bruises. This shows a clear pattern of abuse. Patricia efficiently organized the evidence while explaining. Let's request cooperation from Food 4 Less too. Jessica's work records, salary payment details, security camera footage, all of it will be important evidence. The plan progressed steadily. Food 4 Less manager Mike Wilson immediately offered to help. We'd been concerned both about the changes in Jessica's behavior and that man coming to collect her wages. Security cameras had recorded Robert collecting Jessica's wages every Friday. Clear fear was visible in her expression. First Presbyterian Church records too. At Patricia's suggestion, new evidence was added. The church accountant hesitantly disclosed records. Robert's donations matched Jessica's salary almost exactly. They also found records from his previous church, containing references to his relationship with his ex-wife. 2 weeks later, this evidence was submitted to the Grand Rapids Police Department. Detective Sarah Johnson, with 20 years of experience handling DV cases, immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Financial control, physical abuse, and psychological violence. We'll treat this as a serious case. That weekend, we carefully approached Jessica. After Food 4 Less closed, with the manager's help, we met her in a security camera blind spot. Mom. Emily is. She's safe, Jessica. Everything will be all right now. While embracing my tearful daughter, I explained our evidence gathering and future plans. Tuesday morning, Robert was arrested at his real estate office. What? This is ridiculous. Robert's face, contorted with rage, was unrecognizable from his usually mild-mannered expression. His eyes blazed with violence as he tried to shake off the officer's grip on his expensive suit collar. "I'm an exemplary citizen. A church deacon and successful businessman. Who wouldn't believe my word?" But Detective Johnson remained calm. "Then how do you explain this evidence?" When confronted with security footage and bank records, Robert's expression froze momentarily. "Jessica, this is your doing," he shouted in a voice trembling with anger. "I'll never forgive this. When I get out." His words were cut off by the sound of handcuffs. The surrounding office workers stood stunned at their respected superior's transformation. Jessica and Emily's safety was legally guaranteed. Events moved quickly after that. His ex-wife took the stand and testified about similar abuse. In court, Robert was like a different person. As prosecution evidence mounted, he became increasingly cornered. "This is all a misunderstanding." He tried maintaining his gentlemanly demeanor at first, but when his ex-wife took the stand, that mask completely fell away. "The defendant subjected me to similar financial control, and ultimately..." Lies. Robert suddenly stood up, throwing the courtroom into chaos. "You're trying to destroy my life. Jessica, Emily, I'll definitely..." His shouts echoed through the courtroom as the judge's gavel rang out. It was the moment a controller lost his power, revealing his true nature that had been hidden for years. Restrained by court officers, he no longer resembled the dignified real estate manager, but merely a violent abuser. Church records, security footage, school reports, all evidence clearly showed his guilt. The defendant is sentenced to 7 years in prison. When the judge's words rang out, Jessica and Emily clasped hands tightly. By spring, as the snow began melting, new flowers were blooming in my greenhouse. Jessica had found work at a local accounting firm, and Emily's grades were rapidly improving. "Grandma, look." While working in the greenhouse soil, Emily pointed to new sprouts. Her profile showed no trace of the fear I'd seen that night at Food for Less. "This flower will bloom beautifully." Mother and daughter smiled gently at my words. Spring sunlight filled the greenhouse. Like new life sprouting, their lives were surely beginning anew. 3 months after Robert's trial, on a June morning, my kitchen was filled with long-absent vitality. "Emily, how many more pancakes would you like?" "2 more." Emily reached for the maple syrup with a bright smile. Her once gaunt cheeks now had a healthy fullness, and the dark circles under her eyes had vanished. Her school uniform skirt had recently needed replacing with a new size, showing how well her body was recovering. "Mom, 1 is enough for me. I need to get to work." Jessica hurriedly checked the time. Since last month, she had started working full-time at a major local accounting firm. Gone was any trace of the part-time employee. She looked dignified in her navy business suit. "There's still time. But today's the deadline for financial reports." Then laughter echoed through the kitchen. Mother and daughter seemed to sense something nostalgic in their conversation. Since that day, We've lived under the same roof. There was awkwardness at first. But these casual morning conversations gradually healed our hearts. Grandma, look. Emily pulled out a school test. The math test bore a large red circle and excellent. Her former talent was definitely returning. That's wonderful. In science club, I get to compete in next month's state competition. Emily's eyes sparkled. Using knowledge learned from First Presbyterian Church's gardening club, she had proposed a project on urban rooftop greening. We had many others supporting us too. The church community helped Jessica find her new job. Former colleagues from Food for Less sometimes bring homemade meals. Emily's teacher Jane volunteered to provide after-school tutoring. Mom, remember? Jessica pointed outside the window. There, roses were in full bloom. When we planted those roses, it was the day you and your father decided to get married. 35 years ago, John and Jessica planted those rose bushes together. That memory now held new meaning. We finally made it back home. Small tears glistened in Jessica's eyes. Is it too late to say, I'm home? No. I embraced my daughter. Welcome home. Emily joined us in a three-way hug. Morning light streamed through the kitchen window. New flowers bloomed proudly in the greenhouse, and the garden roses swayed gently in the breeze. Through the trial process, we learned many things. The reality of financial abuse, the importance of support, and above all, the preciousness of family bonds. Oh, that reminds me. Emily suddenly spoke up. I decided to volunteer at the church bazaar this Sunday. At the DV Victim Support booth. We quietly nodded at her determination. Painful experiences were transforming into strength to help others. Have a good day. Watching mother and daughter leave, I savored our happiness. Like the roses blooming in the garden, our lives were finally regaining their true colors. Jessica and Emily walked down the school route in the morning light. Their retreating figures no longer showed fear. Watch over us, John. I whispered to my husband's photograph. The people you cherished have found happiness again. A warm June breeze carried the scent of roses, announcing the beginning of a new season.